Hello, Active Sage here on the Sage channel, and we're here today to take an extremely close look at the Drake Herald. Now, this is a ship manufactured by the same company that created the Drake Caterpillar, the big huge ship we looked at somewhat recently. But rather unfortunately, it looks like the lighting in the hangar is, well, even more subpar on this than it was on the the doors on the side of the Caterpillar, as you see some surprisingly dark sides here, which look like, well, I'm not sure they're supposed to look exactly like they are. So I'm going to do what some people have suggested, and we're going to go ahead and leave the hangar, actually take this thing out into the proper world and look at that. Or at least when I say proper world, I kind of mean the, what do you call that wonderful little thing? The Arena Commander testing area. So let's just hop into that real quick. Well, here we are up in Arena Commander. I'm going to say the lighting here is still broken, so let's try to go to the full PTU real quick. Alrighty, well, we are finally at Port Olisar, and again, this seems to be a darker area here with lighting, but overall the ship looks like it's lit pretty much right, and at least now we're in the full open game, so we'll go ahead and start our tour in a minute. I'm just going to fly it over to another area that's, well, not as busy as Port Olisar to reduce our chances of troubles real quick. Alrighty, and there we are, we're finally at a Cryastro refueling area here. Ta-da! So we should be able to go ahead and take a look at the ship without too much trouble. You will see comlink restored or taken offline stuff because we are in the miniature persistent universe as we do this tour, this inspection of the ship. But overall, we shouldn't be bothered too much. I don't think people blow up ships on these pads too frequently. So let's go ahead and get straight to it. We'll start at the front of the ship, and of course, since we are in the PTU, we can now go ahead and turn on our flashlight if we need it for things. And also, I'm going to use the controller to move our camera around at first here, and I, of course, always have our Wacom pad on hand. That way we can go ahead and point out details with a greater fidelity. Anyway, starting out at the front of the ship at the windows, the first thing I notice is that it's quite the complex piece of geometry to look out of this window. It's actually quite an interesting shape. It's not like the original concept art, where I believe it was just simply sort of a rectangular shape, which you can sort of see right here. They have this up and down piece that shoots back and then back a little bit more, but now they also have this outcropping here, which then has the geometry break up here of a square little thing, so it's not just all rounded. Same thing sort of happens here where we have a bump up there, and it's pretty interesting to see the yellow line follow it, but it doesn't bump back down there, keeping a little bit of detail, very interesting, and curving across the whole thing. We even have some detail here just on the glass, the little white thing to break it up some more. You can also see this large window here has a beam across it with the yellow lines following it, once again breaking up what would otherwise be just a large open area, but it is a smaller beam than something like this to ensure that it doesn't obscure your field of view too much. Pretty nifty. Again, this whole window piece is pretty awesome in the fact that the square piece comes down, carries over before popping back up, going along, and then carrying the same shape sort of as the top area here. Well, I say sort of, because of course once it bends this way, down here it bends upwards to come to a point. And this whole thing is built out, it would appear. Let's go ahead and turn that Wacom tablet off real quick so we can get back up to it. You know, and see the whole area I'm pointing at is all built out in geometry, even if the screws on it are not. They do look a little bit odd, but I think it works relatively alright unless you stick your nose right up against it. Well, the only thing I'd point out right here is that it looks like there's some stretch textures shooting out across here that do become quite noticeable once you see them. I don't know if they were attempting to go for like a grime wear shooting out, but it definitely looks like stretch textures to me. It's pretty interesting too that we get little wings and things like that, that little wing outcrop circular cylindrical thing popping out there, not really circular, well I guess it is, whatever, and then little bits of geometry like this popping out along the whole thing. It's very, very nice. And then if we were to move a little bit to our left, and let's actually go ahead and crouch right here. I said crouch, okay. It's not a toggle. I thought it was a toggle. Interesting. Since when has it not been a toggle? Well, either way. Oh, it is if I use the controller, but not the keyboard. Interesting. And I've just laid down. Anyway, at the very front here, you can see we also have some geometry that goes ahead and leads from the body outwards to this point. Interestingly, it even has a little bit of a curve toward jumps in, and then this is all just one big piece of beautiful glass curving across to give you a relatively, well, unobscured front field of view from inside the ship. A little bit of metal, but you can see it's pretty nifty, and in theory you should be able to lean your head over and look down pretty well and see what's directly in front of you. Carrying on from here backwards, it's a nice shape of the ship here where we got a flat bottom that curves out before, of course, going straight up with this, and that design you can see carries on back and disappears into the rest of the ship, as well as you can see an outcropping here for a ventilation system, which becomes this huge piece of geometry here. So it's really just a big main body like this with almost like a boat-like bottom, and then this outcropping here which flails out to this big ass at the back. And then we have this little guy down here to hold the landing gear in. Now let's go ahead and move closer. We got two little spherical things here. I keep on calling them spherical, cylindrical things here, almost ovals, with actual no detail around them or even honestly on them to make them pop into there. They look a little bit almost out of place. It could be the lighting just making them a little bit brighter than everything else. Carrying on back some more. Let's take a look really quickly into this vent. And you can see that there are 3 dividers in there. Let's turn on our flashlight and see if we can see any better. There we go. That makes quite a bit of difference. You can actually see that these are just thin little dividers, it would appear. I can't actually... Honestly, I can't figure out what the heck I'm looking at. It's a little bit weird in there, honestly. It looks like it's just a flat piece of geometry here with some detail on it, but it almost looks like it's supposed to push in behind these, but it definitely doesn't. The lighting here, what it's clipping through, is definitely making a bit of a mess of that. Let's keep on going back from here, from the cockpit, which I just want to point out, there is geometry here holding it all together. Like this here isn't geometry, it's just in the texture work, I'm pretty sure, but you do have things like this here that pops out and follows the outline of the ship pretty well. This is actually popped out, which is a pretty cool thing. Almost like reminds me of some fashionable sneaker or something, the way it's curved and then hard. You'd expect that on the side of a sneaker or in a city somewhere. Pretty interesting, but still industrial enough to fit with a Drake ship. Let's go ahead and crouch down and carry on backwards. We seem to have like a wing thing here that's wanting to stick out in a very bright light, attempting to blind us and murder our frames per second at the same time. Interesting little wing there. It's actually quite interesting. I've never even noticed it before. There's just so much little detail on the ship that you don't always notice is just this wing. And the fact that it does have its own little sort of support beam. It doesn't just disappear into the ship. It has this sort of bit here that holds it on, which is pretty nifty. Let's see if we can crouch and get under this. There we go. The light itself on it is actually built into the wing, so it's not some big light that's sticking out. It's actually sort of like an airplane's flight lights, so it just sticks out the side, and I'd expect it almost to be blinking colors. This light here is a rather simplistic piece of geometry for the most part, but it gets the job done, having a little cog design at the back of it before moving up the rest of it with some nice texture to break it up. And of course at the front we're going to have this pretty interesting, yeah, it's got some detail on the actual glass on it there too. And if you look very, very closely, you'll actually see there are 2 cut ends on the thing right here and right here, breaking it up as well. So that's a pretty interesting light, that. Looking at the landing gear down here at the very middle bottom, we would appear to have some nightmare glitchiness going on with whatever these 2 are right here, rather unfortunately. I say 2, there's 1 here, it's really 4, but those don't seem to be freaking out quite as much. It's, I'm guessing, some of their parallax stuff where it's supposed to make it look like those indent into the landing gear are currently just freaking out. Starting to think maybe we should have just simply stayed inside the hangar for this tour. But what is done is done. Moving along to the side, we have the use ladder prompt from up above us, unfortunately. But again, we have some freaky deakiness here where it would appear that the textures which are meant to show us some indentation like those, right here and here, aren't doing so correctly. Same with these, which just look like black outlines at the moment. Geometry itself, you can see it's pretty awesome. The fact that they have these little clips here to hold it together, and it looks like they're actually going through these big metal beams and then out the other side and dropping down. So it's as if they're going through and holding it down. Pretty dang interesting, and a nice little curvature upwards here and here, sort of giving it the feeling of, yes, indeed, it is a big landing gear foot. And again, geometry in the center there is rather unfortunately having some LOD trouble with this, where it's not actually geometry. Same with all of this. When we back away, well, for a second there, it seemed like it was when we back up there. Look at that. That's not a pretty sight right there. It's all gone completely wrong. Huh. Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? That's very interesting. You can see a lot of, like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's the shadows of the ship casting here and here, but it does look a little bit odd. Maybe that's fine. It's just throwing me off a little bit. Alrighty, let's see. It's nice geometry in theory if the lighting around its edges and stuff wasn't freaking out a little bit too. You can see, like, right here, a lighting is just getting pulled down suddenly, which isn't ideal, of course. And this little puck seems to be hovering and not actually attached to what's behind it. The material there is throwing us off a little bit. Interesting design and silhouette. If we were to back away to maybe here, you can see the silhouette without any too much of the glitchiness of it coming down flat and popping up and going around. But yeah, definitely it's not having a happy day, that piece of geometry there and its texture work. It's definitely not having a happy day. As for its area where it lifts up and hides, this is pretty good. Again, we're having some trouble with the texture work that's supposed to fake geometry right here, where you can see it's completely flat as it goes around this edge, and it also just isn't looking right. And then as you get to here, it actually looks like it's indented incorrectly. Nice little light there as well, with a nice amount of texture detail around the sides of it. Coming around to here, let's turn on our flashlight. And you can see now it definitely looks like an indentation, as it was supposed to. And that carries along the back. Now, let's see, let's aim our head up. Interesting design here, where it goes from the landing gear chunk to this other big chunk right here. And remember, at the front of the ship, we had the sort of boat-shaped thing that came back and then sort of got clipped onto or almost grabbed by the large intake, which then flailed out at the back. Which, if we were to look at that, then leads us to these interesting machines here, which are, of course, your little data systems that actually eject out of your ship if you're about to be caught and you have no other choice. You can, of course, eject the data that the Herald, being a data transfer ship, is carrying. And go ahead and throw it out. And the ship just jumped. It was so happy at me finally saying that correctly. Interesting. As for details on these look pretty good for the most part. I know every now and again their shape will seem to get lost, but right now in this light they look like they're doing pretty dang good. And I quite like their design. The gentle curve at the top before dropping down to the sort of same hard edges, and these also follow it a bit, having a slightly more gentle design at the top before having slightly harder edges at the bottom. Again, even this curves, but it's not quite as soft as that one it would appear before heading back. Even gentle curves here, so it's slightly more gentle than one would have expected, but it still keeps the overall square shape of everything. And then we come on to the back here, and that whole area I'm told was flailing out from this, so it came back and expanded out, is now dropping back in. Let's go ahead and turn on our flashlight and get up closer so I can see the details here. Got some venting just installed right there in the texture. A nice amount of texture work here to sort of show what is a welding seam right here. Heading down, pretty nifty to that. Some more indentations in the panel work. That's all done by the texture, I'm pretty sure. Let's try to lay on the floor, shall we, so we can get right under here. Ooh, nice little indentations, or not indentations, extrudes here with these two little black box sort of thing majigs here. Pretty interesting. And some geometry down here, actually with a lot of different stuff. A lot of, just squares, but they're all rounded corners, beveled corners, so they don't look like they're just, hard poly models. And let's carry on back even farther. Behind this large bulk that we said was behind the landing gear, what do we have here but another light? It's actually an interesting design right here, where you can see the area to the left and right of this bulk ends up sticking down more now. And it's actually broken up, in a few different pieces because of those rectangle pieces we were walking by. And let's keep on moving backwards. As you can see, the center area and the left and right both raise up to a whole nother divided piece of geometry, which actually sort of getting this close to this area where you're usually not seeing almost looks like just large pieces stuck together, which is almost reminiscent of the space shuttle in some ways. The way some sections of that sort of look like, okay, well, these are different modules that we've built together. The rear thrusters on the space shuttle always reminded me of that a little bit, even though they were technically attached. What else do we have here? An interesting piece of geometry, this, because it's actually one of the scanning devices or information collection devices this is, where it would flip out. And apparently it's SATA M6A1 is how it's connected up wire-wise, I guess. But you can see there's some nice details to geometry here, where you can see it somehow flips out, maybe even slides down on this little dotted area here. So this little thing might slide this way to there, following those dots. Interesting. Very interesting. Some unfortunately low poly geometry here, where you can very much see it's not a perfect circle. It's and same with that a little bit. Once we're this close, it's a little unfortunate. Oh, we even have an I-beam up there, which I suspect might not actually be fully 3D modeled in. A surprisingly flat area right here on the left, where it seems to be just a hard edge before dropping down. It actually looks kind of alright though, like it might be machined. Same with this edge here, which is jittering. That seems very hard to me, but kind of looks like it's probably alright. Let's go ahead and get out from under here where you're having some issues because you ran into another landing gear. And this one, looking at it, let's actually stand up here and then crouch back down. There we go. It looks like the indentations here are actually looking and working pretty well. Yeah, this looks a lot better. Everything on this looks a lot better. So it's just that center landing gear which is having the bad day, it would appear. Because this one looks like it's, well, functioning. The polygons are still a little woefully low on this here, unfortunately, where it just obviously looks like very low poly geometry. And I'm looking down suddenly. Some of it also looks a bit screwed up here in the center, where these edges appear to be being pulled down, where this isn't an actual indentation right here in the center. It's just in the texture, but it's not working right at all. We're not getting any of that parallax as we move by, it would appear. What else? Just some of the lighting on some of this looks a bit off. That's actually one of those indentations, but you can see the indentations here are definitely working correctly, as opposed to that front middle landing gear that wasn't working at all. And now we can see the full landing gear, which is quite the interesting sight itself from the silhouette here, which is pretty nice. We get the same thing we were talking about earlier where these stick out. You can see how it would, this whole thing would swing it back, moving this part up to there. This part might swing up, or it looks like, since it's got indentation here, under, and then the landing gear would probably, using this curve, maybe fit into this and then lift up. We'll actually see what it looks like in a little bit. And very interestingly, that means the area that had low detail in it, this area here, is actually where the landing gear goes, which is usually pretty common, where the landing gear will have, well, the innards of it, where it would be stored, has very low detail, because you're usually not going to be sticking your head up in there. Usually they're a lot smaller than that too. Nice amount of detail, and of course it always seems like their landing gears look pretty awesome. I am getting irritated at the lower polys though on a lot of these circular pieces. That really sticks out to me pretty badly until you get to maybe right here. Now it looks pretty good. Still up, nope, right there you can see they start getting all these hard edges on things. These faceted, rounded corners, which is not happy at all. Anyway, moving on back more, we get to the main thruster sections here, which are just sights to behold, are they not? Truly beautiful thrusters. A little bit weird that it's just a solid orange. I'd almost expect it to be broken up a little bit more than just a solid color, but it does work, especially when you're flying around. I did run into a little something earlier today where it wasn't actually going ahead and giving us the proper feeling of actual thrust coming out of it. It was just lit up, but hopefully that's something that's just happening to me and not everybody. Very, very interesting thing. It's as I walk, I want you guys to look at, let me turn off my light though, it's not messing with it, all the detail on this inner area here. Like all these little details here and how the light plays on it as I walk by. And it shifts along. It's interesting that. I'm not sure it's any sort of issue, it's just very interesting as it's the light coming directly from the large orange thing bouncing off the metal and getting into your eye. And it looks really, really cool. Yeah, A lot of detail there just in the texture. It is interesting that this piece of geometry comes up and flattens out for this little tiny bit of detail they have running around the whole thing, which I really like. You almost imagine it's sending out little tiny bits of thrust, like just out of there, before dropping back down, disappearing, and then of course having this sort of, I wanted to call it a puck, but a large cylindrical section sticking up again. This right here comes up, flattens, and goes down without it flailing out, or what's the word for that? Flailing isn't the right one. That's when you flail your arms. Maybe it is flailing, like it's flailed outwards. Either way, it doesn't seem to do that on this piece right here. Now let's go ahead and turn on our light. Can we actually see into that darker area right there? We can see there's a little bit of texture detail, it would appear right here, breaking it up, which is pretty nifty, before another bump out. Very nice this, and then the final bump out, these outer pieces holding it all together, which is pretty nifty, and I think we can go ahead and now back away, come along here. I bumped my Wacom tablet while we were walking, come along to here, and now you can see that these big sections are what we were looking at. And it's really cool because it looks like they're actually indented down. So this lighter gray area is actually indented in more than this outer darker gray area. And then it has its own little clamps here, which presumably rotate the whole thing outwards as we're flying. Carrying on back from there, it's a lot of the same textures that we just saw. Like you can see, like this is probably the same texture work as, like you see that right there? That little guy, you can see him right there. He's just been squished and stretched. Probably the same thing, or he could be a decal projected on, but I suspect he is the same thing as this is the same thing as this. So it's just the same stuff, but if you're not looking for it, it's absolutely fine, and it looks pretty good, because it just gives you more detail, and well, it looks awesome. You get these cool little guys too, clipping and holding stuff together. As you can see, another piece of geometry, another circular cylindrical piece running along the whole thing right here. This little guy that sticks out, runs the whole length around the whole thing. Very cool. As this piece of geometry right here that we're aiming directly at then disappears behind it. Very interesting. Another bump out before it drops down to, of course, that same texture we used. Got more little things sort of sticking out just to hold it together, which is pretty cool. Curved out. No real hard edges or anything like that, except for like right here on these, which even them, that's not a hard edge. There's a little tiny bit of a bevel on that. So they're really attention to detailed on that. It looks pretty good. Coming back, we have a large, sort of flat, gentle area here, actually, where it sort of suddenly goes from so busy to calm and curving down again, sort of giving me a somewhat more modern spaceship feel. Pretty nifty. And then it converts back to a slightly more detail, but still pretty simple. You know, you got these vents used all over the place. They were down here as well. Very nice. Overall, it's working great. I'm not seeing any like huge issues on these engines. They look fantastic. Honestly, I'm not sure I'm seeing any issues on these engines at all. They're looking really quite nice. And then the engine up there is very similar. You can see that they changed it up a bit, where the textures are a little bit different. Overall, it looks the same, but they've scaled the textures a bit. And this has these little black indentations here, whereas down here, it was just a solid one, but it's the same sort of thing. They changed the texture in there as well, which actually looks a lot better. Instead of just using this texture right there at a slightly different skew, they use this one, which looks nice, but it is nice to see this be different than this. So it's not the exact same thing. You also see these sort of indented pieces that reach across and hold it in. What looks to be an indented piece up there breaking it up. Similar, actually, this piece to what we see right here as well. Pretty nifty. And then, of course, we have these big rectangular outcroppings which curve around the side of the cylindrical thruster. The same as that right there, and a lot of detail work before an actual drop down, it looks like. And let's go ahead. Walk up there just to confirm, are you actually a piece of geometry? And you are, so that's fantastic to me. Where this drops down and this bumps out, looks like it's got textures on it to break it up, before they got a welding seam and this whole thing goes shooting back upwards out across this pipe, which looks pretty good. They got this huge coupling thing here, which is a little bit low poly again for me, but overall pretty good. And then the pipe itself is very low poly, I'd say right here, where you can very clearly see it's not a circle, it's not a cylindrical piece sticking out. And then it goes up and vanishes into that awesome piece of geometry, this big sort of metal shield here, where it actually has this piece right here that sort of flanges out to almost be reaching out, cupping onto it, or at least holding onto it a little bit. Very, very nice. I love that, the whole piece of geometry there, that sort of just shield. And then behind that shield, you can sort of see these pieces of geometry here reaching back behind it. And then, of course, one of our thruster things, which we haven't really gotten a close look at those, but they look pretty good so far. Nice amounts of... I love this geometry. There's almost scaffolding stuff here. Got little beams right there, breaking it up. The design of this is sort of gentler curves, you know, sort of rounded, but then it still goes to pretty hard once it's out in the open. Very cool. And then listen, of course, this is the same right here, except for they've broken it up with little bits of detail, which is always awesome. And then right here, you can see they have these black lines or dark gray lines that pop out and around the pipe up there, holding it in, which is cool. And then, of course, this sort of came straight out. Remember the circular section here? Well, these, they come out at an angle, and they actually, you know, still have the welded stuff. You can still see the poly count a little bit there, which is a little sad, but it does come out, and it's so it curves a little bit there before going to the main puck, before having the pipe itself, which is, well, pretty dang awesome. Let's see, if we move over a little bit more, any more detail that we want to look at or point out. Just cool little rectangular bumps here with these little details. This, it's like a... it's like a rectangle, but it curves around to the bottom of the ship, and you see little connectors holding it in. Nice little bits of detail there. This piece of support metal we were looking at that went hard right here, it also has a piece of texture detail right here breaking it up along the sides, which is pretty nifty. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff here. This thing sort of reminds me of the texture at the back of, what was it, an M50? No, I think it was the 85X. Had these textures at the back, I think, but it's still cool the way this outcrops and then has that. And the texture work here, of course, adds a lot to it, just having it around the opening just a little bit. It's worn away a bit. And then we got another puck, another pipe, and who knows what's in there. We might float about later to go ahead and take a closer look at... Bump my whack, I'm tapping in. A closer look at that. This door right here, by the way, this thing we had walked past without pointing out at all, and my light was actually on that whole time. It makes such a little difference. It's the weakest flashlight on Earth, or in the stars, I guess, since we're nowhere near Earth. Pretty cool, though. You got these little texture details that make this look like it could pull open. In fact, we could probably get up to that, and it'll look even more so, yeah, where it actually says lift. I don't believe that actually animates at all, but that whole thing there does open, and again, it's got the SATA thing. This is another one of the data collectors. The wing itself here that sticks out, you can see a little bit of detail on this right here. It's a piece of geometry that follows it along, so the wing, once again, doesn't just vanish into the rest of the ship. It's got a cowling to it before it comes out. The wing itself is pretty nifty with texture breakups and all that fun stuff, and the, again, running light sort of at the end of it. Geometry looks a little silly right there, as it looks just bland. Again, it's just not as many polygons as I personally would like. That's probably absolutely fine, though. It doesn't stick out like those cylindrical pieces on the landing gear. What else do we have here? Let's go to the other side of the ship real quick. And they sort of have just a big piece of metal where the door was on the other side. Again, we got some... texture breakups for all of this, breaking the ship up pretty dang well. Looks really good. This right here is actually modeled in, I believe. So this is all a big piece of metal sitting on top of the ship, which is awesome. And then actually has proper real, like, in texture or in model breakups, I believe, right there. Heading up those two lines. And I love the Herald. Just a little tiny name right there. SOR2, whatever that means. Maybe it's store version 2. I don't know exactly. Another piece of geometry here, too, bumped up with a light, flat light, just texture, I believe, which does show up quite a bit, but let's just imagine it was intended, as in it's indented into this piece of geometry here. Our thruster, I think, is... well, it's weird the way it's... basically, I think it's stuck straight forward. I can't exactly tell, but it's definitely angled, not matching the rest of the ship, which is a little bit odd. I don't know if that's a glitch or if it's intended, but it would appear that it might be intended, as these bolts are all right around it, matching it. It just is a little disappointing, though, that there's no, like, bevel or anything where it connects to the ship. But the bolts do work pretty well to make you think, like, okay, they put this big thruster thing in, they put this light piece of metal over it, screwed it in to hold it in, and then screwed these screws into the darker section, and then put the little thruster pieces into it. And it even looks like it's missing one there, which would be what would be expected if it was at an angle. So I guess it is intended to be set up the way it is. The only thing I would actually critique about this is this line right here, where we have the gentle curve and then we have the darker gray right here before the outer layer. right here we don't have that darker gray. So you just get the round curve and then instantly this outer gray, lighter area. So you see this one has that nice little darker section right there before it goes to the round. Really misses that right there. It feels sort of uncomfortable, like it's almost a glitch. I don't think it's a glitch, I just think it's something I don't find ideal. Heading back more, we have more geometry outcroppings here. This fun thing. I think the ship just jumped. I don't think that was actually us. Yeah, everything just looks normal. I feel like I had a bad trip all of a sudden. Anyway, nice piece of geometry here before another intake, which I'm not sure if this is actually an intake, but more of a missile pod, as there does appear to be ordnance in there. All the way at the back of it, it does get a little just bland. If it is supposed to be just ordnance, I guess that's acceptable. If it's supposed to be an intake and ordnance, I would expect something a little bit more deep down in there. Right here we have the same data things, but of course now we can look at them in the dark with just our flashlight. They do look pretty awesome. We turn the flashlight off and yeah, I love them. They're pretty awesome, aren't they? Above them we do have some interesting little pipes that are coming out and then disappearing into like the Daniel pod? The Daniel pod! The Daniel pod! Didn't Elton John sing a song about trying to get to Daniel in the night driving? You get to Daniel or something? Oh, Jesus Christ. Anyway, we got the data pod manual release section here. A lot of interesting details along that. I mean, this is just a big, simple thing, but it looks fine when it's right next to this thing with so much detail. And the fact that it does go up, gentle curve, and go back down, disappearing into it. And I think it's got a breakup section at the front of it. Yeah, where this is darker metal, and all looks pretty good to me. Yeah, all looks pretty good to me. Datapod manual release. Press button, then go through it. And I like the fact that it's got number 5 to 8 written right there. You can see that. Because presumably these are datapods 5 through 8. So I guess there's only 4 here really. Even though it almost looks like 2, this is one whole datapod there. Which is interesting. Pretty cool. Coming back, same door we were talking about on the other side. Before the same sort of thing we had seen on the other sides. It could be even a perfect mirror image of it. Anyway, what else do we have here? I guess what we could do is go ahead, back up a little bit, just get a look at some of the details here of these large metal pieces that we said were separate. Leading up, again, it's sort of just like that same piece back there with the cowling that stuck out. It's sort of like a big armor chunk piece that sits on top of it. Hopefully these might even get shot off if you're in combat. Let's see really quick if we can hover ourselves up on top of our ship here. Gosh darn it, I can never figure out how to rotate ourselves with a controller. That brought out a gun. That's not what I wanted. Oh, Anyway, put that gun away by holding R. Let's hover up above the ship. It's such a beautiful thing, isn't it? I love those large pipes coming out of the back section there and the way they move up to the front and disappear. And the way that piece of metal, does have those little tiny semicircular pieces cut out of it. Like these here, and of course the one on the bottom, where it does have those little lips to them that hold it in place. And oh, it's such a beautiful, gorgeous ship. I love this ship. And this one holds up pretty well when you get close to it. It's just, like most of the ships, once you get more than 10 feet away, it suddenly becomes even more so gorgeous. And let's just try to gently land right here. Are we going to come into gravity? No, we're going to just keep floating. Okay, cool. Well, we'll just keep on floating and inspecting the ship as such then, shall we? Nice outcropping here, similar to the other one, that reaches around this metal pipe. Lots of welding things in the texture. Another little wing here, that this wing does appear like it doesn't have a puck holding it in place to connect it to the main body. But it also has a slight indentation on the wing itself just before it meets up to the main body of the ship, making it appear... Maybe it's just in the texture, actually, but it makes it appear like it is connected in rather than just being pushed into it. It might just be a lighting thing, even. It's just very interesting. The geometry in here and the detail is, well, incredible. I don't know how I wasn't seeing anything like this down below. Maybe it's because all this moves, but you can see we have little joint pieces holding all this together. These guys outcropping before a piece heads back, which is just awesome to see. How far down to the ground can I hover before we suddenly drop out of the air? Because this is pretty nifty. Let's turn on our light again. Unfortunately, it doesn't do too much. But you can see these are those straps I was talking about holding this piece in place. Still a little bit low poly on that when you're this close, but nice triangular I-beam stuff there. Clearly a 2D texture that the system was trying to stretch out and make it look like it's 3D. Can't really see too much detail back there, but it works, I guess, for the most part. Let's see. Hold on, what was that? Those little circular things. Holy hell. Those are actually cylinders. These are like properly modeled in cylinders sticking out from in there, those little yellow guys. That is really, really nifty. So that's what happens when you bump your Wacom tab with your Wacom pin when you're in zero gravity. That's quite interesting. It's, the more you know, eh? Heading up this way, though, from where we were, you can see that even though this does just push into this part of the ship, which is a little bit sad, it does have these little connectors here, which is really hard to aim with a controller. These little connectors here connecting the two pieces together, which is pretty nifty. What else? Do we have anything else? Not really, just that, you know, this lighter gray area here is just like a big piece of metal on top of the main ship. Pretty nifty too, the way it connects in. If we can go ahead and fly over here, we'll be able to see a little bit better. Just this stuff here, the way it reaches down and connects into everything else. And there's a little grating in there and breakup of texture here where it's a little lighter than this here. Pretty awesome stuff. I'm quite a fan of this ship. I'm, like many ships on the show, my extremely close looks, I'm not keeping it, but I am a big fan of it. I love the Drake style. I love it quite a bit. Let's go ahead. This is another one of those antenna things. We'll be opening those up very, very soon. Some more details here. Yeah, right here. That looks very, very cool. It's like the whole antenna section here is like a big module you could remove. Like this whole thing is the piece that opens, but it's attached to this big chunk here, which almost looks like a military-style turret. Like this would pop up a little and they'd launch missiles out of the front of it. Don't believe that's what happens, but it's pretty nifty. And you can see the indentations here in the material, in the model, is also copied right here by having an indentation on the actual main ship. Pretty nifty. Let's go ahead and head to the front of the ship again. Sorry, these little lights here just caught my eye. They're pretty nifty, even though they're just in the texture work. Oh wow, and this is actually a different piece of geometry right here to this. You can see a little drop down right there. Nifty. Nifty, 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 nifty. If only I could control, like, everything. This is actually, look at that. That's my left, joystick on my controller, and it's actually moving about the character and the mouse. That's funny. Alright, let's fly more down this way. We would appear to have another intake thing here, but this one doesn't appear to have missiles in it. It's got these just sort of metal planes in there again. Again, I'm not seeing any actual opening. It's just like 3 sheets of metal on top of each other. Carrying on the rest of the way over to this, we get these little maneuvering jets again. We can get close to them now. You can see there's a lot of detail in these. Like, yeah, we're not having the breakdown of geometry here. You can get this close and it still looks very cylindrical for the most part. A little tiny bit there. And some weird textureness right where we're aiming right there. Where it's like, yeah, seems like the lighting's being a bit silly, but overall, pretty nifty, these things. And we fall to the ground. Fall in to the ground. To the ground. Our face hit it. Anyway, let's go ahead and hop inside the ship now. I think we've spent way more than enough time running about the outside of it. Pretty well detailed exterior of a ship. Look, another one of those lights we've been seeing just on like a panel there. Anyway, let's go ahead and pop this rather beautiful looking door. You know, you can see it's got a handle and the button, so you could imagine almost manually pulling it open. Of course, it's a pretty hefty door. Let's pop it open. Never mind. You can't imagine pulling that open yourself anymore. I imagine that this was somehow going to pop up and maybe magnetically stick to this and slide backwards, but the whole dang thing just instantly popped out. Can we close this from out here? No, just use ladder. I mean, we can't mouse scroll between options, unfortunately. That was unexpected. The whole thing just popped open. Okay. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and hit F to get onto this ladder in a second. Let's actually look at the ladder first. Pretty nice ladder. I mean, it's got a pretty good amount of attention to detail. I mean, look at that. We actually have indentations right here, so this is a separate piece from this. I don't know if these are supposed to be slightly rubbery or just another piece of metal, you know, something to let you hold on to. It'd be so cool, but Black screen. I'm on a black screen. Where am I? Alright, that seems to be like sort of alt-tab desktop thing that just happens every now and again. Like 3 times it'll happen and then it won't happen again for a couple dozen hours. Either way, the ladder does have a heck of a lot of detail to it and I'm pretty happy with it. The only major issue I'm seeing is a big old ugly son of a gun world hole right there. That's just sort of clear as day, horrifying and hideous right there. Otherwise, it's awesome the way they have this piece of geometry that curves down, bends around, and comes back up, instead of having just a big rectangular solid piece of geometry do with that. And I love these little outcroppings here holding it in place, even though that one, I mean, this final step here appears to be outcropping a little bit here, but down there I'd expect this piece to be right here. It doesn't appear to be like so. Alright, it's not. That's, I guess it was just a play of the eyes. It's absolutely fine. Woo! Okay, it's fine. Yeah, what I was seeing is just, it's actually broken up. It's not one piece of just color or geometry. You can see this lighter gray area actually drops down to that. So that's what's happening there. And I was just seeing the darker outline edge right there. Or over this. So that was what happened there. My derpy eyes. Hey! Unfortunately, my derpy eyes did also spot another world hole right here. And it's because, like, this little outcropping piece of geometry that holds the step in place, they have it right there, they have it right there, they have it right there, they have it right here. It's just been offset too far to our left. It just needs to be pulled back to the right, I suspect. Same with this. Pull it back to the left here. And that would probably... Oh, actually, no, it's too wide. It's too wide. It just needs to be scaled. Groovy. Well, we found that little bugger. Everything else looks to be pretty fine. Yeah, everything else looks to be pretty fine. Sage is looking for your world holes. Any world holes? Show yourselves. Alrighty, nice amounts of detail and geometry here. I'm loving this. You can see once you go from the outside to the inside section, they definitely seem like they pay greater attention, which is good and it makes sense because you're usually not going to be seeing the outside of the ship with right up to it with your face. It's just, I kind of wish they did make it to that level of fidelity. It's what I was hoping for when Star Citizen was originally being pitched. I was originally buying into it, but, well, alas, it is only reasonable for them to use less geometry on the outside than they would on the inside. Anyway, you can see how beautiful this is, having these pieces here, holding it all together. It's gorgeous. Let's go ahead and interact with it, shall we? Again, and sort of teleport to the ladder. What is nice about this, though, is we were able to open that door without being teleported to the ladder instantly. You know, like most ships, you open the door and you're instantly teleported to the ladder, or you're getting into the cockpit, so it's nice to be able to do that. We can also go ahead and... Jesus, the detail in here is so beautiful. You got these little guys here popping it up, holding on to things. These beautiful little pieces here, just more geometry. I'm going to start going through this at, like, light speed. Because obviously this is already a very long video, unfortunately. Let's hit this close button here. It's a bit finicky. There we go. There, I love that. And the lighting here isn't glitched out like it was in the other areas we were trying to look at this. So nice, this. So nice. You can see we got these little boxes. Some of this, a lot of this, is going to be stuff you've already seen if you've watched the Drake Caterpillar tour. Is like this here. I'm pretty sure these were the things that were on the wall with a little handle at the bottom, which works pretty well. Texture detail to break up where it's coming out of that. A little, you know, texture detail to give us a little screws into there. Bumped out geometry, all nice stuff. This gets a little wobbly, as I believe this isn't actually modeled in any of this detail here. It's just one of those texture things, but it works pretty well from most distances. Carrying on, we have all these beautiful control server rack things again, which look pretty awesome. I love those. Cool. Look at the pipes here, or cables here. Let's turn off our light. They're just running along here, and they're held in by these shiny little metal clips. Or clips, clasps, however you want to say it. System access, again, I think we saw some of that in the other Drake ship, which is a very good use of assets to, you made it for this ship, we're going to use it on this ship, and so on and so forth. Actually, I don't remember which ship came first. They might have made it for this ship and then started sticking it all over the Drake Caterpillar. Either way, though, it's pretty nifty. Our fantastic little toilet. I don't think this one has a shower since it is a much smaller ship. It's just a toilet. Behind it, again, we do have some nice paneling, as well as just that sort of space metal insulation stuff, which is nice. And some tubing here, which does unfortunately show its polys a little bit here, but I guess maybe it's alright. And a nice light there, which again, I love the sort of plastic texture on those lights. Carrying on to our right some more, we got our nice little sink, which has a caution on it, and a non-functioning mirror. I don't know if Star Citizen will ever have functioning mirrors. One would hope, but I'm not going to cross my fingers for that. Reflections are usually quite expensive on performance. More of that stuff behind us. Unfortunately, this doesn't hold up quite as well as this does look like it's supposed to be maybe holding this stuff in place, but it just sort of doesn't look like it, does it? It looks like it is a static plastic thing, and that this is sort of welded to the edges of it would appear. Maybe that's what they're going for, maybe it's absolutely fine. Who knows? Space age technology. Well, super space age technology, not modern space age technology. Above us, once again, very similar to the Drake Caterpillar, we have these sort of ventilation tubes right here. This awesome little outcrop from this coming down. Can't tell if it's beveled there or not. Oh, the lighting just changed. It's not. But it looks alright for the most part. Looks maybe a little beveled there. Awesome thing, and very, very interesting. No idea what you could be hooking that up to. Presumably something outside the ship, and you'd be dragging a big hose all the way up into here. And again, I-beam cross joints in the ceiling. Very nice stuff. Lots of, just like the Drake Caterpillar, lots of stuff up there for the most part. It does get a bit bland right here. You can see this I-beam ends, and then it goes up a little bit more. In fact, we can probably adjust ourselves. Here we go. So you can see this I-beam ends, it goes up, out, over, back in, up again, and then we have a somewhat simple ceiling, but it's pretty alright. I would honestly say dropping that down a little bit would have helped, but you can see it does finally drop down before going back to another one of these ventilation pipes, as well as a circular thing here. A bundle of cables does runneth across right here, up into, just across the whole world, I guess, disappearing into things. In fact, can we move? Yep, there it is. You can still see it. Heading all the way back and disappearing into the far wall right there. That's pretty nifty. I love being able to actually follow that the whole way. Above us appears to be some sort of storage rack, another sort of servery storage rack thing, but with another compartment in it. And I think this might be able to be turned into a bed right here, but I'm not sure. Below this, though, is a proper bed that we currently cannot actually access. I think they're redoing a lot of their bedwork stuff. Pretty nifty and simple. I can imagine myself sleeping in here, staring out that far front window, trying to get to bed when I'm out drifting amongst the asteroids, just silently scanning for things. More server racks, more of these same sort of pull this open things. I'm pretty sure it uses the same texture as these guys right here. If not, very close to the same. The decals look like maybe they've moved about a little bit. Yeah, I'd say that's what's happened. And more servery rack stuff goodness, which of course I come up to this and I just want to poke at everything. And it does say open now. What does this do? Well, if we were to go ahead and press this, and for some reason it triggered the Cryastro, do you want to refuel, restock thing again, which we currently don't want to. Can I get out of these screens? Thank you. It's gone ahead and actually opened up those things on the outside, the scanning things. We won't actually be able to see these from here, I don't think. Trying to squeeze our head up a little tiny bit. Nope, we can't. Okay. But we'll go ahead and look at those again in a second. For now, let's just carry on and keep looking. More cables heading up to the ceiling and vanishing into a puck right there. More little bits of detail there, heading the camera down gently. We can see, unfortunately, on the right here, this sort of just merges in there with slightly fewer polygons than I would like. A little bit disappointing that. Carrying our head down some more. I love the way these cables have these little clamps on them, holding them together instead of just being a big spool of them, which would look cool, or instead of them just being a perfect cylinder that's supposed to be a bunch of cables, they actually bulge out this little bit here, and then they're clamped together like that. Very nice, that. More little cables there, the dead center of our screen pretty much. And then carrying on down, look at this, I just gotta point out, it's too cool. All these little cables here connecting in, and then right here we got them sticking out of the bottom as well. I think we might have seen this in the Drake Caterpillar as well. Jeez, there's just so much detail here. And I guess probably one of the reasons they have so much detail here is because, and let's see if we can get that prompt again, enter support flight seat. This is where somebody's going to be sitting. So if you're sitting here working away at scanning or listening to enemy signals or maybe relaying signals or who knows what, doing special cyber ops, attempting to disable enemy ships via hacking their system, well, if you look up, you want to be able to get some more details. And I believe this seat in the functional version will actually slide in, so you won't be sitting this far away from it. And of course, they have confirmed that the FOV will no longer be locked forever, thank the Christ. Oh boy, that's such a relief to hear. So you should actually be able to get closer and then have a wider field of view so you can still see all this, and it'll take up most of your screen. So you're not sitting so far away having to look at every little tiny thing from afar. Nifty, nifty screens here. There's the word nifty again. I think some people have started a drinking game whenever I say that. Oh, also our Alt button seems to turn our camera to the right, or at least it did that one time. Anyway, pretty nifty thing. Again, lots of the same stuff from the server rack, I'm pretty sure, but it all looks awesome, and I'd love to just boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, press all sorts of buttons and mess with it all. And I love the way it looks like it's all from a server rack, where you could imagine finding the screws and then grabbing this handle and pulling the thing out, and you got your handles here just to hold on when things get rough or when you're sitting down. There's all those pipes that I was saying. That's why they had them all here, because you would be sitting so close to this. You would need all this detail behind when a person is sitting here. It's awesome. I love it. I love the geometry cropping up and holding these. I love it. It's so cool. I love this. It's reminding me of the Ishimura somewhat, except for, of course, the Ishimura had slightly higher tech stuff where it was holograms, but it's still that sort of industrial, almost military feel, but industrial feel that it could be mining operations. I can't wait till they get some of the larger mining ships up and running, too. Or even the small ones, honestly, just so we can try it out. Got a gun rack in here. Not too much to say about a gun rack. It's a gun rack. Nice amounts of detail and, well, interesting design, I mean, on this here where it pops up, but it makes that triangle thing, and here's the same thing. It's just upside down, and then they're connected together in all one big piece of cool metal. Love that. Pretty nifty. And then let's start heading towards the main cockpit. You can see we still have our insulated walls there, but then with another metal wall in front of that, more beautiful insulation. It starts to drop down a little bit here, the ceiling, with this curved piece right here on the center of your screen. Let's turn on our flashlight. Ta-da! It's not just a flat piece either. It actually goes back up, and then you can see that we got more cables and cool stuff in there. Pretty sure that's all done with a texture that then projects depth into the game, which is pretty nifty, and it all looks pretty good for the most part. You can't, of course, have, like, you know, you can really spot it right here, where you see this curves around. You can't see under this red tube. You can see it's just the texture is stretching up onto it the tiniest little bit. So that's how you know those are probably, yeah, you can really see it actually right here too. It's freaking out like crazy, but it's not too bad. It's not something you usually notice unless you decide to stare at it. What do we got here? More cool little things you could imagine taking apart. Don't think we'll ever be able to take all of this apart, but it's pretty nifty. This beautiful insulation tube that goes up and down. Who knows what it's carrying? Another one of these sort of pucks you could imagine pulling the little lug nuts off that and hooking some sort of other pipe into it and taking out of the ship into a resupply of some sort. Yeah, it's a beautiful ship. I love the detail in it all. I mean, we skipped over the seat right here too, which I'm pretty sure these are the same, you know, sort of Drake Caterpillar seats, but they are gorgeous. I love them. Sort of headrest padding, and the rest of it is, yeah, sure, that's padding. It's more or less just fabric on maybe a little tiny bit of foam, but it's padding, right? Seat belts and all. I love it. So beautiful details. Beautiful. Anyway, let's go ahead and head all the way up to the cockpit, which you do have just so much detail in this. It's incredible. The little indentation where it drops down here, this whole almost triangular shape here with the yellow outline before it drops down. You got these little guys reaching down with his face, eye, mouth, holding onto it forever. Cyclops with the same mouth, eh? Oh dear, I'm seeing faces. Just look at this little supports there, so you could hold on to that while you're maintaining this if the gravity went out. Such interesting things. Now, unfortunately, this here, and here might be something from outside of the ship. Let's actually lay on the floor. I can't tell. I told you it's an extremely close look. Nope. No, it's good. They're actually just lights. They're actually just little, like, footpath running lights. Let's turn off our light. They're not lighting it up, unfortunately. But they actually do have their own little bit of geometry reaching out and holding on to them, which is just insane. Just insane. You can see more geometry down here, too. Like these little things here. And beveled corners, as always. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. The exteriors of these ships always seem to let me down just a little bit when I get right up to them, but we come inside and they always just blow me away, it seems. It's fantastical. Where the hell am I? Okay. We're way back here. I really do need to learn to stop bumping that Wacom tablet with a pin when I'm walking about, but I'm holding the controller and holding the pin at the same time. And now we're like a child. We can't quite get this way. Our hips are stuck on something, so let's stand up. a little bit here and then crouch back down so we can get up to this. The final ramp up to the cockpit seat. And it's actually quite interesting, this section here, because you can see it almost looks like a door. It's like almost like a MISC door, or I guess a Drake door. This indentation right here that runs all the way along it, and if we aim down, of course, all the way along and under this little ramp here, which is quite interesting, especially the fact that if we were to look here, we also have these little guys that reach around it, which is well, a sight to see, the red puck, and then it reaches around the opening and back in. So if there was ever a door here, it's definitely not going in there now with that. It's almost as if, yeah, a door was once planned and they scrapped it. Oh, Jesus, look at the details on this. And then this is all texture work here, I think, at least some of it. Like, this is texture indentation, this looks to be real. It's just interesting. That looks a little bit offset, but nothing to worry about. Getting a cramp in my face from smiling so much. Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff, isn't it? I just let your eyes just run over all. It's like a mess of geometry, but it's all intentional, I'm pretty sure. I mean, you get like this, it's like a rectangular pup with two shorter ends, so this end is shorter than that one. There's a specific geometric name for it, I don't remember. This piece slants that way, while this piece slants that way, copying the sort of shape of the outside of the ship. Remember, we had that boat side thing, so sort of keeps that design a little bit. Over to our left, what do we have at? The same thing. Vents, pipes, awesomeness. It's all pretty cool. And of course, so much of this appears, if that's a texture seam, I don't know, but all this appears to be indented in and actually modeled out with all this awesome bits of metal here. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. And then this separate section you could imagine pulling out. I love this stuff. Alright, let's go ahead and hop in that seat, shall we? And we'll look at the control panels at the front. God, I love all these little tiny everything. I love it. And the fact that so much of this, by the way, has, you know, we get this sort of light line here, which I think might just be a lighting thing, but it sort of looks like it's welded or fused or even just glued to the back wall, and you can imagine these screws going through the whole thing, maybe. But then this, again, you get that light wall, that light line, L-I-G-H-T-L-I-N-E, heading there, and then a proper indentation here, which I really love when you get those indentations. Even if it's just in the texture, it really makes it feel like this is sticking in there more, as long as you don't get any weird parallax with it, which you might sometimes. Alright, let's hop into the awesome seat. I said hop into the awesome seat. We lost the prompt when there it is. Hologram of the whole ship. We're in the floor. Oh my goodness. And we're back behind, and we're in the seat. Okay, that took a second. Let's go ahead and actually take off here if we can. Can I please take off? Let's try with a different control scheme, shall we? Instead of the... There we go. Cool. And you can see, if we swing this about, those things on the outside have now opened because we pressed that one control before. And they all seem to be intact. Cool, so we'll actually go ahead and fly out there in a minute and check that out. Let me just fly the ship off the pad really quick. Just get ourselves over here away from everything. There we go, that should be good. And let's actually take ourselves down a little bit. There we go, cool. So we'll hop out and take a look around at the ship. It's a pretty thing, ain't it? And you see our character sliding back and getting out of the chair. Boop-a-doo. And actually, we forgot to actually look at the chair, so let's just do that again. There we go, we'll press Z so we can look around. Hand on throttle, check. Hand on stick, check. We got little buttons and fun stuff here, it would appear. Press to release. All looks pretty well modeled out and lots of details there. Not seeing any massive issues. In fact, I'm quite impressed that they actually, you can see a little drop down right there and drop back up. So they actually did model in that little divider between the red section and the gray section. Absolutely love that. Again, this is all pretty standard. I think it's the same sort of stuff we've seen before, but it does look cool. I love these monitors and the chunkiness of it all. God, I love this too. These metal straps that come out and sort of hold the whole thing together. You can see this one sort of just stops here, but this one carries on top of it a bit. Who knows what that one does? I love it. It all seems like it's thought out pretty well. Fake indentations here look a bit so-so because of just how dark that shadow is, but it works pretty dang well. And unlike the Caterpillar, we haven't seen 1,000,001 little world holes or weirdnesses on this ship. Of course, this ship is much smaller. And yet I still seem to have made a video that's probably as long or longer than the Caterpillar one. Gosh darn it all. I keep thinking I'll do a quick video. It's never going to happen, is it? Alrighty, well, beautiful cockpit as always. Pipes running about. Things holding the pipes in pieces in places. This popping out and disappearing into that kind of bugs me, but this one goes up and disappears into actual something. Lots and lots of little tiny wire details there. Beautiful stuff to see. I love this, where these are, of course, being held by these clips here. And then this one, the ribbity one, just keeps on going. But this one does have a little thing holding it in place before it keeps on going and vanishes. Unfortunately, it looks like that center middle window that we talked about, what was an hour ago, I guess now, can't really see out of that. There doesn't appear to be any way to, like, lean over this console and look at it, unfortunately. Yeah, no luck there. Alright, let's go ahead. Once again, hop out of the cockpit. Let's go check out those big scanner things outside, shall we? Okay, it just teleported us outside. So, that makes it quite easy to get to where we want to go, doesn't it? And yeah, you can see, we can actually go ahead and fly up here, turn our light on. Can we get our light on enough to... Nah, I can't really see in there, but you can see there's the big console, connects all the way down to the bottom with some interesting geometry. This I-beam thing, which is what all these controls were actually attached to. I was saying those are those metal straps that is actually connected to an I-beam, which seems to go all the way down and back around and up the other sides, which is pretty cool. And then the main control panel itself is apparently attached to that with little things that stick out of the sides. Very nice. Very, very nice. Let's go ahead and look at those. Ooh, what are you that I missed before? You little blue camera. You are awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at these shiny, shiny things now that they're opened up. And you can see I was a bit wrong about what pieces did open. I thought it was just this top section. Nope, it's the whole section. It's not just this piece right. Let's get our mouse out. Right here, nope, it's this whole bit. I thought this would pop open and there it was, and this was sort of cowling. No, the whole thing just flings open. And then we bump our whacking tablet again because I turned off mouse move mode and ta-da-da! Anyway, let's fly into here. I'm pretty sure it's all texture work giving it this detail, but it looks awesome nonetheless. Are you all texture work? I'm pretty sure you are. Yeah, you are, but it's hard to see, so that's a good sign. Let's turn on our light. It's so hard to see anything right here, but there are details there in the texture work again, making it look fantastic, as well as some actual geometry break up there. Well, I think with a darker section. Little bits of detail behind this. It's really hard to see as this light is apparently super duper bright, but very, very awesome. Let's buzz down to that one right there. Oh, hey, and look behind this one. We just had, that doesn't hold up as well, does it? Because, ta-da, we can see there, and then we fly up, and it all just goes black. All that detail there goes black, because the parallax is... Yeah, that's not good. The parallax between those two is... not playing too nice together. You can actually see, like, pieces are moving way too much there for that. Anyway, though, on this, it's like a solar panel, which I want a ship covered in this now. That's really cool. I really quite like that, the way the light shines on that. Look at that. That's awesome. Anyway, I think that'll do it for today's look at the Drake Herald. Let's see if we can just glitch ourselves into the cockpit instead of having to go through that door again. In fact, you know what? We will go through the door again, because it is such a funny thing to watch those big sections right here and here just pop open. Ready? Here we go. Any second we'll get the prompt, I'm sure. Oop. It's so funny. Alright, let's see if we can fly ourselves in here too without issue. Yay, we made it without issue. Let's hit the close button. Nope, not enter support seat. Close. Hey, it worked. Coolio. Let's also go ahead and just hop in our seat here. Our whole ship is spinning now. I'm spamming F. I didn't mean to use ladder, whatever. The door's going to be open now. There we go. Pop ourselves back into a third person. Huh, interestingly, our engines appear to be off now. Very interesting. Spin our camera around to here. Can we, yeah, rotate it now so we can see everything. Let's go ahead and press in and close up these landing gears, shall we? Once we get them into light. I wonder if some of those pieces will actually move on them in the future, like those dark little pieces. Anyway, in. Oh, wow, they closed up So they don't actually disappear all the way in there. They just close up like that, which might explain their geometry being a little bit silly, because since they don't get completely hidden, they can't have super high geometry on them, because then they're always having to render that geometry, or have LODs for them. I would still argue make the LODs. Also, you see that? It clips through the one of the scanning devices, unfortunately, when you open and close those, if those are open, which is a little bit sad. I also don't think I have any way to open and close the scanning devices, so those are just going to stay open as we fly about. Anyway, guys and gals, that will about do it for the Drake Herald, a rather beautiful, very beautiful actually, ship with very minimal graphical issues. Very, very minimal, honestly, I'd say. Like, what, we had just the one landing gear, and that was really the only serious issue we ran across. God, I've been watching The Expanse Season 1, and this sort of reminds me of some of it right there. That's... it's a pretty ship. I love Drake ships. I love them. Anyway, I think that'll about do it for us. Our thrusters are... There we go. Come back online. Give us a boost. Let's... Yeah. Awesome. Anyway, that's going to do it for reals. Thanks so much for watching, and I shall see you guys and gals next time. Ta-da! Of course you want to see how it blows up, right? I mean, who doesn't want to see how a ship blows up? So we gotta crash it real quick. Apparently it just goes puff.